What can we really say about Spongebob? It's a cartoon series from Nickelodeon, it's won countless awards, made a few movies, and got nicked from the roof of a Burger King that one time. It's brilliant. I'm not quite sure what it was about SpongeBob, but I absolutely loved this show. Something about the endearing characters, low stakes, incredibly charming visuals and setting, not that part, made it an extraordinarily comforting experience to watch. Unfortunately for young me, I was never too often exposed to a continuous stream of new SpongeBob content directed straight into my veins, a concept that I very much desired. No, instead, living in the UK meant that all I had to watch on telly were programs that were, a majority of the time, made locally. Channels like CBBC, CITV were legitimately like church for me. I would get up at 7 AM, wake my parents up to ask if I could put the telly on and enjoy some quality children's content.
Yeah, potato. I know he's a potato. I know jokers, don't laugh at us.
As great as they were, international programming was heavily lacking. Other than the odd hits like The Next Step, it was content that belonged to the Queen, which meant no SpongeBob. For the most part, I got my SpongeBob fix from a channel called Viva, which is essentially a mix of MTV and an infomercials channel. They would only show kids stuff for about an hour on a Saturday morning, but I was there without fail. They even aired other kids shows every now and again, but we all know what I was really there for. Eventually, I stopped watching Viva because I caught a glimpse of one of the music videos they showed and it had sex in it, that's right, sex! And I got scared and never tuned in again. It actually managed to stay on the air all the way until January of 2018, but eventually ceased broadcasting. Thank the Lord. Obviously, as I've gotten older, and as the series has, according to people online, declined in quality, I don't indulge in SpongeBob quite as much. But don't get me wrong, I'm highly fond of the memories I have of driving to the nursery, watching the same 2 or 3 episodes on my mum's iPod Classic. Not only that, but I am embarrassingly intrigued by SpongeBob video essays and deep dives into the more mysterious and spooky parts of the show. What's funny is that despite how much of the internet has picked this series and all of its associated media apart, I haven't seen a whole lot of discourse surrounding my favourite entries into the franchise. Those being the PC games, Employee of the Month, and the movie tie-in game. I mean, there's also Lights, Camera, Pants, but I didn't play that one as a kid, so. Developed by WB Games and published by THQ, these titles are point-and-click adventure games set in the SpongeBob universe, with the movie game following the plot of the film, albeit very loosely. What's significant about my copy specifically is that they're all under the umbrella of PC Fun Club, which I later found out was a line of games sold by Focus Multimedia, a publisher based here in the UK that sold games as part of this Fun Club at, quote, impulse price. So I guess my parents cheaped out on games for me, huh? For the moment, this video is mainly going to be about Employee of the Month, released in 2002 with a potential follow-up video on the movie game, if I can be bothered. So the game starts up with a clever little transition from the brand logo into a set revealing that the characters are intentionally posing for the camera. Bold move for the opening of your game. The implications for this are cataclysmic. Are all the characters self-aware? Are any of the locations we see real, or are they just a set? Is the music we hear diegetic or non-diegetic? I need answers, Sponge! Well, at least we know what the Wikipedia page should say. The story starts where Mr. Krabs receives 2 free tickets to Neptune's Paradise, a theme park owned by King Neptune. He decides to give them to SpongeBob for being Employee of the
Year.
Am I being taken for a fool? We invite Patrick along with us and tell him to meet us after work. One thing that is immediately apparent is that the cutscenes for this game look a little foul. They move fine for the most part, but the models and the animations for the face are just fucking terrifying. Their dead eyes and stiff smiles and lack of polish really makes them so abysmal to look at. My only thoughts are that they did their best to replicate the style of early SpongeBob, with characters squashing and stretching in a more reserved and realistic way, unlike the movement of modern SpongeBob, but it just looks so off. The problems don't just end with characters. For some reason, the models that are supposed to have flat sides to them just don't. There's always something slightly wrong with them. But the biggest offender has got to be whenever text is on screen. This game commits the cardinal sin of unironically using Comic Sans for its text. They use it multiple times as well, choosing to place it with terrible spacing and these awful blank spaces. It's almost as if they made it in Microsoft Word, screenshot it and stuck it in the game's engine. But hey, at least they've got fully animated and voiced cutscenes, unlike the movie game that would come 2 years later. With all that said and done, let's head right into Chapter 1, Employee of the Year. You know this game was truly ahead of its time when it has a transition from cutscene directly into gameplay. The Last of Us Part 2, eat your heart out. So to get this game working in the first place, I had to jump over a few hurdles. Now when I was a kid, I owned these games physically on discs, and I still do. Unfortunately, my new PC, built in the year of our Lord 2023, is missing a hard disk drive, meaning I had to somehow get the game digitally. Not to fear, dodgy websites are here. But no, it could never be that simple. See, running this game on Windows 11 results in horrific missing textures, meaning one ISO file and a Windows XP virtual machine later, and we're ready to go! Yeah, it looks a little worse, but now we're playing SpongeBob the way God intended. The gameplay, naturally, is very simple. You control a 3D model of SpongeBob wandering around a 2D background. Click where you want to walk to and double click to run. With all the difficulty of crafting intricate gameplay removed, the devs could really focus their efforts into making these backgrounds look as lovely as possible. I'm not an art guy, but there's a lot of nice detail, and they match the style of the show to a T. Not only are they gorgeous, but in each individual screen there are lots of little hidden details that light up, play a sound, or move when you click on them. SpongeBob might even make a little comment on them as you find them.
The Krusty Krab. That sign stands for everything good and pure about Bikini Bottom.
These little moments are one of the most endearing parts of the game. While reminiscent of moments in the show, it more so reminds me of old cartoons from the early 20th century. A style in which objects could become animated or alive just for the sake of it. They're not integral to the story, they don't even net you any rewards, they're just cute little moments that make the game a little bit more memorable.
That fella must really like the taste of dirty glass.
Oh. So here we are, our first location, the Krusty Krab. A set piece that acts as a little tutorial for the entire game's mechanics. Everything the game has in store for you is present in this little section. And unlike a lot of games with incessant pop-up blocks of text or annoying disembodied voices, this game never wants to hold your hand. Something very, very rare for a kids game. The game never ends up talking down to its audience, and it's something that I appreciate a lot. We're immediately presented with an NPC with whom we speak to. We ask for directions to Neptune's paradise. He doesn't know where it is. Fake fan. And he says he'll tell us after being served. One serving coming right up. We find a dirty plate just opposite him, find some salad in the salad bar and a burger in the What does this imply? This is where the game's primary mechanics come into play. We open our inventory, mix an item with the environment, in this case the plate in the sink, to clean it, and then after we mix the burger with the salad with the plate to form a complete Krabby Patty. This is essentially the meat and potatoes of the game. It's kind of like Jamie Griesemer and his idea of a repeated 30 seconds of fun. Where Halo 2 has a chess-like level of strategy in its shooting, SpongeBob has solving the trivial problems of strangers. You talk to an NPC, they give you a problem to solve, you find items while you explore, fuse them together or with the environment to progress. A concept that the Resident Evil franchise has been shamelessly ripping off since 1996. Despite being part of the tutorial, the anchovy that you speak to has a lot of character and helps set the tone for the rest of the game.
There's a bus stop downtown where you can catch a bus to Neptune's paradise every day. Now leave me alone. I'm eating.
Every NPC is kind of a piece of shit to SpongeBob, and I would have it no other way. Like I said before, I haven't indulged in the show too much throughout my life, but one part that I always disliked was the idea of SpongeBob as kind of a celebrity. I don't really like it when all the residents of Bikini Bottom put their life on hold to interact with him. The town's population are at their best when utterly apathetic to SpongeBob's boundless optimism, a concept that this game nails. I never really picked up on the misery of Bikini Bottom when I was a kid, but now it just makes me laugh. All this man cares about is his food. He isn't entertaining SpongeBob's antics for fun, he hates him. Of course, there are other types of characters, but for the most part, it's utter b****. And I think this approach to writing NPCs does this game a huge favour. It really makes the world feel bigger. If every conversation started with a, "Hey SpongeBob," you would never really feel as if you were going anywhere. Even the mainstays are written well. Mr. Krabs is fueled by his greedy tunnel vision, Plankton, who only shows up for a bit, gets some good gags, and Squidward, of course, is just as self-centered as ever.
SpongeBob, I think you finally lost it.
The game also doesn't forget to include little details to maintain continuity. For example, you hear Mr. Krabs counting money in his office with him telling you to go away and that I have to go. We later find out where he's going with an in-game cutscene and eventually see him ourselves later in the chapter. If you choose to go back to the Krusty Krab after this moment, SpongeBob will comment on how he shouldn't be snooping on Mr. Krabs' stuff while he isn't there. Don't get me wrong, it's not Red Dead 2 levels of micro detailing, but it's charming to see nonetheless. So after serving the anchovy like a good little minimum wage worker, he says that there's a bus that goes past Neptune's paradise every day. A telescope icon appears on the screen letting us know that we've unlocked a new area. Clicking on that same icon on the top reveals a map system that allows the player to traverse around the map with every chapter having a different map. It's got some nice art that shows off how the world kinda looks on the macro scale and even has little details like SpongeBob looking scared in the scary chapter. They've also got some banging tunes. Downtown Bikini Bottom starts out with a wide shot that has you move down to Patrick. Despite having literally no content to it, I like how this extra shot was left in. Its existence only serves to help establish the world, and the framing of it makes SpongeBob simply look like a part of it. Rather than having the world being designed around him, he's navigating himself through it. Once we start speaking to Patrick, who is dripped out in his shirt and cap.
Hey, Patrick, I like your hat.
Yeah, it's the newest style. I'm keeping it real.
I don't know why he's wearing a shirt when he's so often seen without. I guess some people just aren't ready for his raw sexual energy. You know what? It's even more offensive that they tease Patrick showing off in a bikini contest, and yet refuse to display in any capacity.
Well, I was the only male contestant, but the judges said I had the most unique figure.
You can talk the talk, I guess you just can't walk the walk. We ask how we're going to get the bus, to which he suggests finding some buried treasure over in Goo Lagoon. Oh my god, potholes. I feel right at home.
Oops, oops, oops.
Over at Goo Lagoon, we start out in a car park with a cute little game of football here for some reason. While I've spoken about the smaller interactive details that are for the most part pretty difficult to find considering how seamlessly they blend into the background, this moment in particular stands apart from the rest. This little football mini game, if you can call it that, has its own unique animations, actual physics, and its own predetermined sound cue and end animation.
Yippee!
This seems innocuous at first until you realise that there's nothing really else like it in the entire game. These more overt, in-your-face distractions are cute and breathe a little bit more life into the world, but ultimately I'm glad they're not sprinkled in too much as I feel they would ruin the pacing. Heading into Goo Lagoon Beach, we meet Madame Mackerel. Okay guys, if you want to talk to women, here's how you opened up.
Hi, lady!
Brilliant. Now follow it up with one of these.
Wow, pretty lady!
She lets us know how scared she is of going off into the sun without sunscreen, and tells us a bit more about the rumoured buried treasure that Patrick was talking about over on the bus stop. And maybe, just maybe, with some of that buried treasure, she can afford to get some better recording equipment.
I'm from the English Channel. It's a beautiful place. You'd like it, I'm quite sure.
Did they just get one of the programmers to do this or something?
Ta-ta!
Moving down the beach, we meet a stingray who has willingly chosen not to use sunscreen in the hope of getting
Nice and flaky.
Man, who knew stingrays had such brutal beauty standards? In fact, he's so keen on getting his tan that he'll trade us his sunscreen for cooking oil.
Dude, keep your pale hands to yourself. Sticky fingers.
Tell you what, this beach has some strange characters.
Hi!
I swear, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. You can't prove that.
For a game that came out in 2002 and uses primarily fish for its cast, they really nailed what a Reddit mod looks like. Over on the other side of the beach, we meet my man, my boy, Larry the Lobster, who tells us all about his fancy workout routine.
First of all, you have to wake up each morning at 3 a.m. and go for a 10-mile run.
Okay!
Then you have to do 5 sets
Larry,
of exercises isolating...
sorry to interrupt you, my friend. Bro, can you stop moaning over there? My god. So we asked Larry if we can use his bucket and spade to dig up this elusive buried treasure, and he's far too sentimental to hand him over. My brother in Christ, you are 25. We try and bait him into thinking there's mermaids nearby, and given that Larry is a beta simp cuck, he eagerly looks around but sees through our plan. In an attempt to trade for the bucket and spade, we give him an offer he can't refuse: Grandma's homemade urchin chip pie. As we head to Grandma's house, a cutscene plays in-engine showing Mr. Krabs heading to the Bargain Mart, Bikini Bottom's local supermarket. I like how these short cutscenes give us a cute little insight into the lives of the world's residents. It makes the area feel real and lived in rather than occupied by NPCs simply waiting for your arrival. Not only that, but they also serve to help slow down the pace of a game that's already pretty damn pacey. I especially love the voiceover that narrates the scene.
He is such a god. He makes me laugh so. Haha.
For a kids game, you might expect something over the top or exaggerated, but no, he's very well reserved and, much like the other characters, very apathetic. So we break into Grandma's house without asking and see her working away in the kitchen. Wow, this home is gorgeous. It's got a cute fireplace, baby pictures of SpongeBob, and the sounds of Grandma's slowly shattering spine. We begin to speak to her and, in her old age, mistakes us for Patrick.
Oh, Patrick, is that you? What a pleasant surprise.
Regardless, she says a pie is conveniently almost ready, but is missing the all-important urchin chips needed to complete it. So then what the hell is this? You're saying this is solid pastry, is it? Do you need to sit down, Grandma? Now that we've progressed enough in the story, we've managed to unlock all the locations that are part of the chapter. The map screen changing from mainly black and white to bursting with colour. Over at the bargain mart, we see a car parked absolutely covered in filth.
That's a boat and a car. It's a boat car.
I said his comments were endearing, not insightful. Coming out of the store is a fella with very baggy clothes, to which he says he bought them off of Mr. Krabs, meaning BAM! Crustacean cock. I find it funny how the game censored him with this little bit in the foreground, but then that same year showed him off naked from a very gratuitous angle in the show. Well, at least now we know which company has the biggest bollocks. So the nude crabs tell us he's selling some old junk and surprisingly gives us some cooking oil for free, which if you think about it is probably the most out of character thing he's ever done in any SpongeBob media. Back in the front of the store, the cashier says he'll give us some urchin chips for free if we wash his car. We head outside and use SpongeBob for his God-given purpose. I'm not sure if this moment falls into the same category as the football bit from earlier, but it's nice to see the devs kept creativity in mind when considering how SpongeBob would actually solve a problem. With his car actually looking worse now than it did before, we head back in and let him know, to which he grants us permission to take some urchin chips. So from here until the end of the chapter, we're essentially dotting the I's and crossing the T's. With all of the locations discovered and all of the townsfolk spoken to, all we need to do now is put our plans into motion. We return to Grandma's to finish the pie, give said pie to Larry, which makes him feel so miserable he feels the need to go for a run right there and then to burn off the calories, likely leading him into a cycle of unhealthy dieting habits and grab the bucket. Could this be a commentary on toxic body and beauty culture, with the people who fall out of line becoming victims of their own self-hatred? No. With bucket in hand, we head on over to the furthest west point of the beach, and my god, this music is sinister. Am I looking for bus tokens or getting ready to fight Chaos Witch Queelarg? Heading back to the main beach, we return to the Stingray and trade him the cooking oil for his sunscreen.
Wow, fish that cook themselves. What'll they think of next?
You cook fish? And feed them to who? With our bus tokens ready, we head on back to the bus stop and see the bus driver ready and waiting. This dude is an absolute sociopath. One moment he's anxiety incarnate and the next he's an assertive bully. I love him. Again, I love to see characters that actually have some character to them, regardless of how much time they have on screen. Instead of most games where NPCs just exude this sickly sweetness and willingness to heed to every beck and call. He says he's too nervous to drive without an umbrella. Why does he need an umbrella to help him drive a bus? I don't know, whatever makes him comfortable. At that point, I noticed we still had one item left, so return to Madame Mackerel and trade the sunscreen for her umbrella parasol thing. And with that, it's chapter 1 done. I think overall, chapter 1 is a pretty solid start to this title. The world and characters are full of its own unique charm. It does a good job of making the puzzle solving accessible to kids, and actually does a lot with the premise considering your ultimate goal is literally to get the bus. My only issue with it is actually an issue that stretches across all 4 chapters, that being that it's just so short. At about 30 minutes per chapter, with only 4 in total, you never real settled into each environment. I mean, I can't exactly blame the devs considering the team behind this game was so minuscule, but still an extra chapter or 2 would have been perfect. For me it's slightly different because I played this game so relentlessly as a kid, so to me each chapter feels like home, but at the same time I acknowledge that won't be the experience for most. When each chapter ends, it ends with the same diabolical animation style as before, with this one containing probably the most terrifying renders out of the whole game. On our way to Neptune's Paradise, the bad weather kicks up even worse than the driver was expecting, and we get thrown off course, eventually missing Neptune's Paradise and crashing down into chapter 2. Viewers, may I welcome you to rock bottom. Much like in the show, rock bottom is a dark, unpredictable, lifeless wasteland of confusion and violence. Oh, sorry, that was the wiki page for Slough. Chapter 2 acts as the story's tragic peripeteia, tearing SpongeBob down from his highest peak. Rock bottom acts as a reflection of this tragedy, as well as the anxiety that SpongeBob feels after realizing the potential of missing out on the merriment that his objective so kindly and lovingly provides. He is now placed in an unfamiliar environment in which survival is now the main objective. Seriously though, chapter 2 is my favourite by far. You thought this game was just going to be wholesome little sponge guy running around Bikini Bottom doing chores? Nope, this time he's on a mission. And what a set piece to do it in. This place felt so atmospheric and spooky when I was younger, and it still does now. So many of these gorgeous backgrounds utilise low angles or wide shots to make it look much more intimidating and unwelcoming. The use of deep blues and blacks and greens and greys make it almost look alien and very much uninhabitable. The motif of having stuff sink from the surface continues here as well. Rather than stuff like car exhausts or a crab trap, it's heavier stuff that would likely be found in deeper waters, like a TV or a literal ship anchor. Not only that, but the intense rain and complete absence of music makes it super unsettling and a total departure from the relatively harmless Bikini Bottom. For all of its apathetic dickheads, it's home compared to the isolation that this chapter instills in you. So when we crash down, Patrick manages to delude himself into thinking that this is Neptune's paradise and runs off out of excitement. The bus driver admits defeat and decides to just chill in the bus station.
Hi, Marty.
Do I have to say it?
Do you have to say what?
I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. I told you so.
Something about this place, man, I'm not sure. It's probably the juxtaposition in the lighting, but this place really feels like some sort of Resident Evil secret bunker. It's super creepy looking. Actually, it looks more like a dentist office. I don't know, whatever you're more scared of. For some sense of comfort, we head over to the bus station receptionist. Hey, I remember these guys from the episode.
Excuse me, ma'am?
Yes? Can I help you, sir?
They're missing their accent.
I can't understand your accent.
This means war. We ask for any information on our new environment. She refuses to say unless we get her a kelp bar. In our frustration, we yell out loud.
Anybody else want anything? Please tell me now so I can get it all at once.
Who are you talking to, weirdo?
Seriously, have you ever seen a kids game this mean-spirited? After leaving the bus stop, we head down the road to the restroom with Spongebob Squarepants Employee of the Month bravely pointing out that there is in fact just one gender. Very based, very based. When we enter, SpongeBob dies. And a fresh copy comes out of the sewer with a newly found coin. We come back up the road and use said coin in a vending machine to grab a kelp bar. Why is the vending machine out on the road and not in the bus station where it should reasonably be? His goals are beyond your comprehension. On our way there, we see a familiar figure. It's the same guy from the Krusty Krab. We greet him, but he insists that we've never met him before. How strange. He says he's waiting out in the rain for a bus, kicking a can around to alleviate boredom. Why is he standing out in the rain and not in the bus station where he should reasonably be? His goals are beyond your comprehension. And my, if you thought the guy from chapter 1 didn't like us, my god, this guy hates us.
You can talk to me.
Look, no offense, little guy, but I'd rather watch paint dry.
It's from him where we get the first part of this chapter's story. Rumours of Marlin the Wizard. Now, even as a kid, I honestly thought the idea of a wizard just randomly popping up was a bit far-fetched, for some reason. But now that I'm older and don't skip through dialogue in a dialogue-focused game, I'm glad they actually set it up subtly rather than having it come out of the blue like I thought for so many years. We bring the kelp bar back to the receptionist, and as a reward, she mentions that there's a weather station nearby that her sister works at. SpongeBob sees this as a good opportunity to ask when this bad weather is going to clear up, so naturally we walk in and... Alright, hear me out.
Yeah, great line, Romeo. You sure know how to woo a girl.
This gorgeous creature says that the tours for the day have ended and we cannot explore more unless we wait until tomorrow, or can pass for an electrician. We can't do anything for the moment, so we head back out. Luckily for us, we can head around the back of the building, and before it's revealed to us, another in-game cutscene plays showing what Patrick has been doing in the meantime. He's seen with Mermaid Man, enduring the challenge of a cola drinking contest. Oh wow, if you look closely, you can see them doing a line of sherbet lemon. How whimsically innocent and family friendly. Back to SpongeBob, we come across a mechanic working hard in the pouring rain. Turns out he's actually working on nothing. He was sent outside to fix an antenna that's functioning perfectly fine. Regardless, this absolute chincel won't give us his toolbox unless we get him at Kelpsy, mentioning that we can get one at the Rusty Anchor. It's evident that some time has passed as Mermaid Man along with Barnacle Boy are in the car park. While he's fine, it turns out that Mermaid Man has got
such bad gas he can't even stand up.
I don't know if being able to stand should be your main concern. My guy is on the verge of cardiac arrest. Barnacle Boy says we need to get someone stronger to help lift him off the ground, to which we, of course, take on this burden.
I'll be holding my breath. I am underwater after all.
Actually, I think you'll find in the Season 8 episode, Mermaid Man Begins, we find out that Barnacle Boy can indeed breathe underwater because Mermaid Man fed him some barnacles or some shit. Learn your fucking canon, Barnacle Boy. Damn, the rusty anchor is kinda cool. The gentle rain on the roof, the cluttered walls and the little tables makes it look so comfy. Cottagecore? Nuh-uh. I think it's time for rock bottom core. We talk to Big Mac, Little Mac's sworn enemy, who welcomes us to the bar. I think Big Mac was supposed to sound like Mike Tyson, or at least that's what they were going for.
Anyway, it's amazing how some old castanet could really tie a place together. It's a good thing.
But I doubt there's a big crossover between SpongeBob fans and boxing fans, so I'm not quite sure why they bothered.
Nice place you have here. It's real, rustic.
Yes, I seem to have a real knack for feng shui.
Well, I can't eat raw fish. It gives me a stomachache. Thanks anyway.
Tee-hee-hee funny. We ask him to move Mermaid Man back into the boat, and he agrees that a strange old man moaning in his car park might not be good for business. Now that he's been established as a man who cares deeply about his reputation, he decides to put a stranger in charge of his bar while he goes outside. While he's away, we try and take some of his kelpsy, but Patrick and Mermaid Man, the bastards, took it all, so we'll have to settle for Diet Coral Cola. Big Mac returns, and Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are nowhere to be seen, leaving the only likely conclusion that he put them out of their misery. The next part of this game was the first and only time I actually managed to struggle in terms of how I was meant to proceed. I went back to the mechanic, handed him a drink, but he saw past my ruse and shouted at me, the bastard. So here I was, running around the locations I had unlocked, struggling to think of how to progress. I spoke to every NPC, clicked all around the screen at every screen, but no dice. I even tried using the dreaded hint button up at the top of the screen, something I'd never even used as a kid. Truly, I was the one to have reached rock bottom. Frankly, I don't know what kind of help this hint button would provide to anyone of any age.
Look at SpongeBob standing there, waiting for you to guide him. So guide with all your might.
Thank you? I mean, who knows, maybe they're doing it on purpose, trying to be unique and cryptic. Maybe SpongeBob walked so Dark Souls could run. I was running around for what felt like ages until I eventually realised that you're supposed to just take the anchovy's kelpsy can, even though he told you not to, and I am an upstanding citizen. Although I must admit, his comeback makes up for the time I wasted.
Sorry I took your can.
No problem. I hate you.
By mixing the empty can and the mug we got at the Rusty Anchor, we managed to trick him into believing the cola we got him is kelpsy because it's a children's PC game based on a children's property that came out in 2002. And he lets us help ourselves to his toolbox. Now being able to pass as a mechanic, we head inside the weather station once more.
Right! With this toolbox, I might be able to pass as JoJo.
Firstly, we head into the room on the ground floor and find out that it's a recording studio with Plankton on set trying to film something. He lies and tells us he's doing a PSA on college education, when in reality...
I'm innocent! I would never dream of doing the things those bottom-feeding reporters accuse me of. Those pictures were clearly faked!
Hey, you already did that joke earlier.
Hi!
I swear, I'm innocent!
Or maybe it's not lazy writing, maybe Bikini Bottom desperately needs a visit from Chris Hansen. As a reward for exploring, we get a behind-the-scenes tape showing us the process of how they made parts of the game, and it's pretty cool to watch. I don't know anything about animation or art design, but it seems they put as much effort into this as into the actual show. There are a few of these dotted around the game with one per chapter, although I only managed to find 2 while playing casually. Exiting the studio, we try and make our way into the control room, but are told by Milady that Marlin the Wizard, the same one that the anchovy was talking about, has locked the door with a spell. With no option left, we go upstairs to the main newsroom and meet Gary Gulper, the main news anchor of the station, and oh my god, I aspire to be as narcissistic and delusional as Gary Gulper.
Aren't you Gary Gulper, the weatherman?
Why, yes I am. Aren't you lucky?
He tells us that he sent JoJo out to fix the antenna because his weather machine is never wrong, yet is reporting an area of rock bottom that is experiencing eerily perfect weather, as opposed to the torrential rain the rest is enduring. We use his Mega Screen 2000 to isolate where this perfect spot is coming from, revealing Marlin's hideout. On my way out, I decide to visit JoJo one last time, thinking maybe I had to give him back his tools. I make my way around the back of the weather station and greet him, only for him to say,
"That sure was a refreshing kelpsy."
I don't know why, but in that moment, I didn't want to leave. JoJo, he was such a simple man, just trying to get by, and I called him a chincel. I knew at this point, this was the last time that I would see him. He'd likely live here for the rest of his life, while I exist closer to the surface. Forgetting about rock bottom, thinking of it as no better than a stain on the bottom of the ocean's shoe. Whatever. The final location of Chapter 2 is Marlin's little hideaway, starting in this goofy-looking giant wizard hat. When we enter, we see a slot machine waiting for our arrival, and, well, I can't resist an opportunity to gamble, so... After a short maze, using the slot machine's result as a guide, we manage to find Marlin's hideout with Patrick sleeping in his hammock. We talk to him and find out that Marlin is as petty as Gary is arrogant. It turns out that the reason the weather has been so miserable, and the reason that we are in rock bottom in the first place, is because Marlin couldn't emotionally handle the fact that the weather station and the machine are controlling the climate in the local area.
Don't let him fool you. He's the character behind that insidious weather-controlling thingamajig.
Now, instead of being normal and minding his own business, choosing to just alter the weather in his little hideaway, he instead decides to endanger people's lives by cursing the land with unprecedented bad weather that borders on apocalyptic.
No, controlling the weather is my job.
Like, my man, get a grip. He hands us a wand and tells us to open the door he locked and sabotage the weather machine, which, I mean, I don't want to do it. My hero's in that building. So is my girlfriend. Fine. After heading back to the weather station and unlocking that mystery door, we find the machine and the final cutscene of the chapter plays, showing Spongebob and Patrick meeting up and doing this. I understand that the point was that they broke the machine and stopped it from working, but from what it looks like, they were just pressing random buttons. The world could just have easily gone up in flames or blown away or blown up. But oh well. Chapter 2 is super solid. It's a huge departure from Chapter 1, choosing less so to play it safe and going for a more creative, unpredictable direction. While the characters you meet are certainly the most fun and memorable out of all of them, Rock Bottom really sets itself apart due to its atmosphere. From the photography of each scene to the decision to not use music in its entirety, Chapter 2 is just more impressive. The cutscene hard cuts back to our cast back on the bus in Bikini Bottom. Spongebob and Patrick's antics upset the driver to the point where he's had enough and drops us off back home. You know what? I take it back what I said about the bus driver. We have been nothing but kind and helpful to him, and yet he still decides to lie to us, claiming to be out of gas and sending off to find some, leaving us back to square one. Did you like that transition? Much like last time, the moment we are left to our own devices, Patrick runs off, this time to get food. The first location in Chapter 3 is a diner in which we see Patrick sitting down eating. You know what? I take back what I said about every character being written faithfully to the show. Patrick's a dick. In the first chapter, he at least shows some enthusiasm and maintains that naive optimism and childlike wonder that he's actually known for. For the rest of the game, he just buggers off and leaves you on your own, whether that's to satisfy his curiosity or satiate his stomach. I understand that having an NPC Patrick follow you around might be annoying, but come on, Patrick would never leave SpongeBob to figure out stuff on his own. Well, he does encourage SpongeBob to never give up.
Never back down!
He immediately zones out and just starts thinking about his food again, like SpongeBob was never there. He then tells us that Sandy is in the middle of prepping a rocket for science or some shit, and that we could hitch a ride to Neptune's Paradise. While we converse with Patrick, one of the staff comes out front, to which we say hi.
Yep, I've been here coming up on 25 years. Best grilled cheese in town.
You must be old.
You're a charmer, aren't you?
Never change, game. Never change. She tells us that she has an order for Sandy, to which we, of course, accept the responsibility of delivering it to her. One part of the diner that separates it from the rest of the chapter, the rest of the game even, is the inclusion of a darts board minigame. While having a dedicated score variable, as well as a high score variable, I use the term minigame loosely, seeing as how there doesn't seem to be much strategy to obtaining a high score. You click the middle and a dart lands in the approximate area with RNG deciding where it ends up. My only thought process as to why this was included was that the game was originally meant to have multiple minigames scattered around each chapter, but at the end they ended up scrapping them and just kept this one in. Maybe the boat cleaning part in Chapter 1 is the remnant of those neglected ideas? It makes sense, as the battle for Bikini Bottom PC port is entirely made of minigames, as opposed to its platformer collectathon console brethren. The next location is Jellyfish Field, a calm, relaxing environment in which the threat of deadly neurotoxins is ever present. This is another example of the game doing something completely unique for 1 microsecond of gameplay, and then never ever utilising it ever again. The jellyfish are their own unique model, with their own unique animations and AI, and can even sting SpongeBob, causing him in turn to show off his own unique animation. I don't know, to me it just shows that the devs really cared about making the game that bit much more immersive and memorable, even just for a moment. We find Sandy out catching jellyfish and hand her food. As a reward, she agrees to let us hitch a lift on her rocket. It turns out that she herself has some tickets to Neptune's Paradise as well. Sandy reminds us that SpongeBob will need his water helmet in order to enter her tree dome. Don't fucking mammal-splain to me, Sandy. We travel over to SpongeBob's neighborhood, an absolute staple of the SpongeBob franchise, and while Patrick's house isn't available, SpongeBob's and Squidward's are. Unfortunately, they're not as fancy, expansive, or impressive as you might want them to be. They're more so just a couple rooms with minimal detail. That's honestly one of my biggest complaints with Chapter 3 specifically. Unlike other chapters in which the places you visit actually feel real and habitable, the locales in chapter 3 just seem to serve the story and then leave for good. Why can't I travel around SpongeBob's house? Why does the one room we visit use this horrible bird's eye view that makes it feel so claustrophobic? Where's Gary? We take a look around the one room we're allowed in and find our water helmet, currently home to a sea snake, making it unobtainable. We check Squidward's house and find an advert for a trinket shop called Sardine Sundries playing on the TV. The guy mentions that he has dream glasses for sale for free, goggles that let you see into your friend's dream. Sounds silly, but who am I to argue with a man who has stainless steel Tic Tacs for eyes?
Skiddly bop!
We go upstairs and Squidward, conveniently, is fast asleep. We head on over to Sardine Sundries, a quaint, bizarre little shop made from an old, discarded sardine tin. Which, if you think about it, is pretty fucked up. Like, imagine if a new shop opened near you and it's made out of a renovated family tomb. Before we speak to the shop owner, we catch yet another sighting of the elusive anchovy. We confront him again, and much like last time, he insists we've never met.
People say I resemble a famous movie star. Perhaps that is what's confusing you.
Wow. Who knew Spongebob Squarepants Employee of the Month had such powerful education and awareness about gaslighting and manipulation? Eventually, we talk to the shop owner, he goes on some weird rant about the gay agenda or something, and we grab his dream glasses. Back at Squidward's house, we equip the glasses and enter into his Whoa. Now this is more like it. When I think of chapter 3, I think of this moment. When I think of this game, I think of this moment. It's a massive improvement in terms of creative set pieces and memorability. I'm not sure why, but I feel like this short section is the reason that chapter 3 isn't all that great. Not that the section itself is miserable, it's actually the only part that's kind of interesting, but because I get the feeling that the devs thought of it first before any other part of the chapter. Meaning they just kind of built a chapter around it and lazily made excuses to get to this specific point. Like, you couldn't have thought of a more creative way to find out about Sardine Sundries other than literally just putting it on the telly? Well, at least we still have this part. Starting with this nightmarish creature. I was very happy dying without seeing a squid pants, but oh well, I guess the devs had more sinister ideas. We make our way down the valley and past these creepy SpongeBob statues. Now, I'm no psychologist, nor am I smart enough to derive meaning in the imagery presented, but what I will say is, I'm living in this bitch's head rent-free. Maybe he was the one who was gay all along. Eventually, we climb some stairs and make our way into a concert hall. Wait. Playing a concert? The people there, they don't like it. I've seen this before! Run, Squidward, run! No, instead we get his clarinet from him and wake up in the real world, real clarinet in hand. With said clarinet, we head back to SpongeBob's house and charm the sea snake out of our helmet. We grab it and head back to Sandy's tree dome, the last location of chapter 3. When we arrive, we see that Sandy's rocket is ready to go, with the only issue being that she's lost her oxygen tanks. She claims to have lost them, but when I look behind the benches, oh look, they're right there. Were you looking blind for... Why is she looking at me like that? You wanna scrap or something? Go. Ah! Lads, I can't lie. Chapter 3 is kind of stinky. It had to be one of them. It's the only chapter out of the 4 that reuses a location, and while Bikini Bottom is different from chapter 1, none of the set pieces we travel around are particularly memorable, aside from the dream sequence of course. As well as being the shortest out of them all, in the previous chapters, there would be characters who wouldn't talk to you or set pieces that you couldn't fully use until later in the story. Like in chapter 2, you're presented with the doors in the weather station and are required to consistently return to that same location to progress. In this one, you go there once and leave. You have zero incentive to come back, whether that's for story reasons or otherwise, although the map music goes kinda hard. So we hand back the oxygen tank, and with that, the chapter ends. Another ghastly cutscene plays, showing the rocket failing to start up after Patrick stands on the cable and breaks it off from the rest of the rocket, making all that effort amount to nothing. That's it. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back. I don't like Patrick anymore. What was once a really solid friend that, yeah, was kinda goofy but always meant well, has now turned into an utterly unlikable idiot whose behaviour borders on sociopathic. It's only until our characters are in the rocket and on their way do they notice its lack of fuel, causing them to fall out of the sky and crash to their fiery deaths. The credits begin to roll to the simple sounds of ocean waters, and now I'm kidding, they're fine. We recoup and recover and find ourselves in the 4th and final chapter, Bottoms Up. Bottoms Up is another town nearby, a city that's considerably more upper class than Bikini Bottom, hence the name. Everything, even the grass and the rocks, are fancier than at home. Naturally, the game makes another excuse to get rid of Patrick, this time making him ill from all the sandwiches he ate in chapter 3. Oh! My god, why did they make his belly look like tinfoil? giving me some sort of weird form of trypophobia. You know what, good, that guy's a prick. I'll be glad to have him gone. Once we get control over gameplay again, we talk to Sandy, who tells us we can recharge the oxygen tanks over at Oxygen Springs, a place that is essentially like a spa or a bathhouse that uses oxygen rather than hot water. Funny that they decided to play around with the whole underwater aspect of the show, already showing us rain underwater, fire underwater, and later water underwater. Down the road we see the sign that we destroyed, we click it and when we get to Oxygen Springs, we confront a camera asking it to let us in. This little guy's actually pretty funny. He tells us that despite being a spa in which most people are in swimsuits, we require a jacket to conform to the establishment's dress code.
Jackets? Isn't everybody in there wearing swimsuits?
Well, yes, they are, but before they're allowed to change into swimsuits, they must be wearing jackets.
Oh, I guess that makes sense.
Of course it does. Just don't think about it too much.
With nowhere else to turn, we make our way back to the rocket, and before we get there, the game interrupts us and shows us yet another in-game cutscene. We see one fella angry at another fella, who's tossing around a golden coconut. It is here that we see the major theme of Chapter 4, classism. The first instance in which class convergence is displayed on screen, and it's a hostile interaction, showing how, despite living next to each other, filtering the same salty seawater, it is class divide that defines their relationship. Back with Sandy, she tells us that, to get a jacket, we can call in a favour from her friend Cowfish Craig, in the hopes that he might know where to find one. Our next location is Waverly Hills, a clever play on word on Beverly Hills, tee-hee. Once over there, we click on the tree on the right and pick up a coconut that fell out. This is the one time that a progression item placement seems a little unfair, to be honest. Now obviously, I found it because I knew it was there, but an average player, let alone an average child, is not going to find it particularly easily. We find that the gate to Waverly Hills is locked behind a pressure-sensitive slab of metal. We turn on the fountain and inflate SpongeBob with underwater water so that he is heavy enough to activate it. I wonder if someone is into this. Oh my god. I find it funny that this whole time, the devs actually did have the ability to shape and mold the SpongeBob model to pretty decent results, and just wait until now to do anything with it, and never again. This game is full of surprises. After making our way through Waverly Hills, we meet one of the residents, that same dude who was absolutely seething in that earlier cutscene. He explains to us that the man in the shack is Cowfish Craig, and is currently angry at him because he stole one of his golden coconuts.
But his shack is an eyesore. It's keeping all of our property values down.
What makes this guy more of an asshole is that he admits that Craig actually lived there before Waverly Hills was even built, meaning he has more of a right to live there than the rest of the neighbourhood, proving once and for all that following the law nor common decency was ever expected from the rich and powerful. I would never expected SpongeBob to be so candid to real life. Over at Craig's little house, we talk to him and he explains how the golden coconut had fallen over the rich dude's fence into his yard, claiming that if it fell onto his property, it is his property. When we ask what he wants the golden coconut for, he explained that he's only using it as a paperweight. When we ask if we can find him a new paperweight, he says, sure, and we use the regular coconut as a replacement in what I assume is an Indiana Jones reference? I mean, you've got the dangerous floor and the pedestal and the light. I don't know, I haven't seen Indiana Jones. As I'm sure neither has the game's target audience despite their insistence on weird references to pop culture. With the feud settled, we return to Cowfish Craig, who tells us that a restaurant called Sublime Seafoods actually offers jackets as part of their dress code. When we tell the rich dude the good news and return him his coconut, all he gives us is a lousy coin.
A quarter?
Well, I don't carry much cash on me. Sorry.
We return once again to Sandy and use the coin on the phone box that's been there all this time. Turns out that the sign from the beginning was a billboard for Sublime Seafoods with a phone number down in the bottom right. I remember feeling so smart when using this phone. This game is pretty respectful in terms of not talking down to kids and holding the player's hand, but having to look at the phone number on the billboard in tiny text and having to remember the numbers and manually put them in felt so good. The little phone ringing delay before the voice comes through, wondering if I did it correctly, makes it feel so rewarding.
Hello, this is Sublime Seafoods. How may I help you?
We call up Sublime Seafoods and after a brief conversation get told the location of the restaurant, revealing it on our map. At the front gate of the restaurant stands a booth with a bouncer inside, making sure no one can get in without an explicit invitation. Turns out the actual restaurant was built over a giant forest, with the only way to get there being a path connected to an even more giant wall like it's Attack on Titan. After some badgering, the bouncer comes out and is revealed to be a lot smaller than expected.
You're the bouncer?
Damn, sure guys really can't catch a break. Further down the wall we run into a dude running a competition with the first prize being, conveniently for us, an invitation into Sublime Seafoods. The competition involves guessing the name of Sublime Seafood's new slogan, and for all this game's little plot holes, this one is just the worst. First of all, who is this guy? SpongeBob points out that there's no one around to do business with, implying that he's like a merchant, but that's it. He says that he's been gifted an invitation to the restaurant and that he's supposed to hand it out in a trivia contest. Why? I can understand Sublime Seafoods would do a contest involving their new slogan to stir up buzz, but why give it to this guy? He's just a merchant who sells stuff on the street. What does he gain off it? He wasn't gifted an invitation for himself. This is the most baffling and confusing part of the story by far. It feels as if a couple of writers had different ideas as to where the story should go, but then just handed off the script to voice actors without anyone talking to each other. It feels very, very sloppy. When we head even further down the wall, we see a pair of binoculars pointing out into the forest. We use them and immediately find the slogan we're looking for.
Sublime Seafoods taste like chicken.
How do they know what chicken tastes like? We tell the merchant, and rather nonsensically, he gives us our invitation. When we head in, the dude we heard on the phone is ready to take tables. Funnily enough, he changes his attitude towards us after we tell him we have an invitation, also known as clout. He goes from an overtly hostile person talking down to us as if we were no more than a parasite, but suddenly, when the implication comes that we have money, he shows us some sort of respect and affection, demonstrating how it is money that really defines your position in society. Wow. I knew meritocracy was dead, but I didn't think SpongeBob would be the one to confirm it for me. We don't stay for long, as after getting the jacket that we oh so desired, we get kicked out for not having the palate of a Tory.
What can I get you?
I'll have a Krabby Patty.
What? Krabby Patty? Well, I never. Get out. You must be from Bikini Bottom or some equally despicable place.
Out of fear, SpongeBob gets paralysed in a T-pose and we are swiftly removed from the premises, jacket still equipped. After heading down to Oxygen Springs, we are granted immediate access to the spa and notice Patrick, the bastard, has already made himself at home. Turns out that he has committed a crime by breaking and entering into the establishment and has taken one of the springs for himself. You know, this whole situation could have been avoided if these two had, like, a phone. He tells us that he left his underwear back in the changing room but is too shy to get them himself. Your other clothes are right there. Why didn't you put your underwear with them? And if you're so scared of being seen naked, then how did you get from the changing rooms to the spring without the...
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Over in the changing rooms, we find yet another one of those cute little behind-the-scenes videotapes and... I was worried you weren't going to show up. The little story arc involving the anchovy comes to a conclusion, revealing that all this time, it was not the same dude, but a whole web of identical siblings. I thought that was pretty cute. Totally unnecessary for the main story, but it's a cute reward for the players who spoke to the NPCs you weren't required to talk to. When we bring Patrick his underwear, he hops out of the spring fully changed, as we finally recharge those oxygen tanks. The game automatically starts us with its final cutscene, showing the gang now ready at long last to get to Neptune's paradise. And who would have guessed? It's a calm, relaxing journey all the way there with no interruptions or errors. We finally land safely to our beloved conclusion. And in Employee of the Month fashion, this final cutscene contains not only the worst example of animation, but also text as well. It's almost poetic. After a short kerfuffle with the ticket dude, we're allowed in and watched as the entire game's cast pops out in surprise, eager to enjoy the day with us. I know I said all the way in chapter 1 that I didn't like when SpongeBob was treated as a celebrity, and I still don't. But still, this ending is super sweet, and it's nice to see all our work and kindness really paid off. The part I like the most about this ending is undoubtedly the tone that they set as the characters are on the rides. Instead of just a soppy ending with everyone just having fun, Patrick and SpongeBob are being idiots and incredibly irresponsible with how they use the equipment. Not only that, but the characters in the bumper cars crash into each other with such egregious aggression. Like, it seems they genuinely want to hurt each other. It's fantastic. Once the day is done, we and all our friends we made along the way leave and journey into the sunset. So we beat on, boats against the current borne back ceaselessly into the past, knowing deep down that it was always about their journey, not the destination. I love how quickly this game decides to end. Like, it's the wide shot of all the cast, this other shot of Patrick that is so short he barely manages to finish his line, and then an immediate cut to just ambient ocean noises. I like it. Most games will go for a big bombastic credit scene with boundless music and flashy animations. Not SpongeBob. No, he's humble like that. As much as I've kind of bashed on this game for its plot holes, design decisions in terms of what it decides to leave in and what it decides to leave out, and of course those harrowing pre-rendered cutscenes, I love this game. I love it to death. When I think of SpongeBob and all its cultural significance, I always think of this game and what it does with such a simple story, and frankly, boring main quest. Unlike the games in the franchise that have released on consoles, games where you're actively fighting enemies with victory over evil being the ultimate goal, this game is admittedly smaller, lower stakes, more of a slice of life. If you think about it, think about the show it's connected to. A simple point and click adventure where the main mechanic is talking to people is far more in line with Steven Hillenburg's vision of SpongeBob as opposed to a 3D platformer with mechanics focused around goofy superpowers and destroying robots. And even when you look beyond the simple concept, this game is still pretty impressive for what it is. Aside from this game is presented very, very nicely. I've already gushed about Chapter 2 and its atmosphere, but I must give praise to the others as well. While similar, they evoke the feelings that they were actually going for. The homey environments feel homey, the relaxing environments feel relaxing, and the spooky environments feel very spooky. All the backgrounds and set pieces have clearly had so much love put into them. The writing is, for the most part, witty and intelligent, and all the characters are like, NOT YOU! With the voice cast giving it their all as they always do. The game didn't fail to make me laugh on numerous occasions, with jokes I never really comprehended as a kid now making a lot more sense to me. I've always been a fan of video games, ever since I can remember. While other kids were learning the alphabet through books, I was learning it through Winnie the Pooh the Honey Hunt on VTech's V-Smile. My point is, there are games for all ages, with a lot of kids games in particular not holding a lot of respect for their players' intelligence. Employee of the Month is not one of those games. Despite the target demographic being very, very young, the game is never handholdy and actually encourages a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking with item mixing mechanics. You could even consider it to be quite a ballsy move on behalf of the devs to make a game aimed at people with the attention span of a gnat focused almost entirely on listening. Overall, I'm proud that this game was a staple of my childhood, and I'm even more proud to have it displayed on my shelves all this time later. At 16 pages in length and nearly 11,000 words, I think I've gone on for long enough.